The rumors of my early retirement on this channel and other social media platforms have been greatly exaggerated. So to quote Samuel Clemens, and to quote Mike Patey, it's time to get back to work. I got a fresh shave and a haircut, just got back from my Boeing 777 landing currency sim ride. Current and qualified to go back to work. I got a line for June. Let me tell you all about it. First off, with the industry, it's all hands on deck. The number of people going through the turnstiles at the TSA counters across the country is almost back to 2019 levels. Nearly 2 million people are traveling per day on the airlines throughout the United States. So the airlines are having to ramp up very quickly. All leaves have been canceled, all hands on deck, everybody come back to work. And they're pressing the Boeing 777 into quite a bit of domestic service, as I see some of our flights going from LA to Miami, for example, backfilling for some of this domestic shortfall. International flying, on the other hand, is still very slow to recover as different countries come out of their different COVID restrictions. So a lot of us are coming back from various leaves of absence. I had 3 months off during this recent COVID situation, and that just wrapped up at the end of May here. And altogether, it's not uncommon for a wide-body FO to lose their landing currency. Any airline pilot has the same landing currency as any other pilot, 3 landings within 90 days. And as a FO on a wide-body aircraft, remember there can be up to 4 people on this crew, so you've got up to 3 FOs, what we call a FO, an FB, and an FC, and those 2 other FOs don't see a landing at all. And so if you bid FB or FC, it's likely that you can go 90 days without a single landing in the Boeing 777. So you got to go back to the simulator to get your landing currency. And when you go back and do this, it's not just 3 bounces and you're out of here. It's a little mini check ride. It's some excellent training. It's an opportunity to get caught up on what's going on with the industry and learn from some of the previous mistakes that have been made in the recent past. And by the time you get to the Boeing 777, you're generally a pretty senior with the company airline pilot, so you're getting to know the schoolhouse pretty well and all the folks that are in the schoolhouse. And I got to say that we have got some of the best, most experienced instructors in the airline industry today, but we're losing this experience by the dozens every day as most of us age out of the airline industry in the next 5 years. This great, vast font of knowledge is rapidly leaving the building and is going to be replaced, and needs to be replaced with the best qualified people that the company can find. So right out of the gate, we start with 4 pilots and 1 simulator pilot, a rated check airman in the aircraft, and we sit down for an hour-long briefing and cover trends and topics that are timely for your dual instruction for the day. And then you jump in the simulator and we line up a pretty power-packed profile that's going to take a couple hours to complete to get your 3 landings. So for example, the first thing we do, hop out of the gate, is just do a standard SID, take off, depart, and the check airman surprises you with a sudden level off. You're on the instrument departure, you're climbing out of your destination or your departure, and ATC gives you a very sudden level off. ATC, air traffic control, should not do this, but if in the event they do, the lesson is you got to fly the jet. Imagine that. If you're climbing out at a couple thousand feet per minute and ATC gives you a level off within 200 feet of your current altitude, you're going to blow right through that altitude if you rely on the automation to make that altitude change, or to make the aircraft stop at that given altitude. What you got to do is click off the autopilot, click off the auto throttles, rip the throttles back to idle, and gently lower the nose without lifting anybody out of their seats in the back of the aircraft in an effort to get to the desired altitude. A sudden altitude change from ATC requires you to hand fly the aircraft. And that's the great thing about these simulator rides, is it gets you a chance to get back into actually flying the aircraft. Now, I've been doing a lot of visual approaches up in the mountains of Idaho during my time since I've been gone, but a lot of these folks have not done any kind of flying at all while they've been either out on leaves of absence, or even if they've been flying the aircraft as FB/FC. Most other airline pilots don't have light aircraft to continue their flying currency with. So the next thing out of the gate is to come back around for a non-ILS approach. Today, approaches are broken down into either ILS approaches or non-ILS approaches. Long gone are the days of the dive and drive kind of non-precision approach procedures that we used to fly. With today's technology and GPS, almost every approach has some form of glide path guidance to bring you down to a point to make a safe decision to land. So the very next procedure out of the gate is to go back and practice those non-ILS procedures, a couple little different things with the automation to get you set up for that a normal approach and landing. And a non-ILS approach is something you usually don't see on the line, especially on the Boeing 777. It's always vectors to an ILS every time at some major airport. That approach may end up in a landing, or it may end up in a go-around. That's another great thing to practice in the simulator, because when's the last time you've done a go-around on the line? It's probably been years since you've done an actual go-around in the aircraft. And you got to review that memorized litany of doing the go-around, using the automation to help you make that go-around and getting all the steps in the correct order and sequence. Next up is an engine failure on takeoff. Now, typically you get the same old V1 cut, as they call it in the industry, the same old drill you've been doing ever since you got into the airline industry, and that's where you get ready to take off, you're rolling down the runway, V1 rotate, and just as you're beginning to lift the nose, one of the engines fail, and you have to do the procedure and climb out away from the ground on one engine, which of course the aircraft is designed to do, and each takeoff is engineered to be able to perform on that particular airport on that particular day. But you get caught in a rut doing that same old V1 cut every time. It's the same deal. Rotate up to the desired pitch and do the procedure to fly straight out on the runway. What do you do if you have an engine failure, or even more startling, an engine fire followed by an engine failure on what's called the second segment of climb? What happens, and this is what we did in my case, what happens if you get that engine failure after you've already taken off and you've already began your climb out, but you're not quite cleaned up yet, but the engines have come back to some sort of a climb power setting? How do you handle that situation? And even in the simulator, even when it's pre-rehearsed, it still presents you with a rather startling situation, because all of a sudden, bam, there it is, and it's not it's not at V1 as soon as I'm breaking the ground. It's not where I'm used to getting this emergency. It's somewhere else. Now what do? The procedure's slightly different. You got to have a pre-rehearsed plan. And when dealing with the automation in these large jets, a lot of the dealing with automation has to do with dealing with the auto throttles. Remember, these throttles are servo-controlled auto throttles, and it's very rare that you manually run these auto throttles, other than just when you push them up for takeoff and when you retard them for landing. Now, in this case, you need to make sure that the throttle is giving you, the engines are giving you the desired setting that you need for this single engine setting. When you got that engine failure on takeoff at V1, that was pretty well taken care of. In the second segment of climb, you got to do something. So there are any number of ways to skin this cat to get those engines up to continuous power or go-around power, and perhaps the easiest way to do it is to simply hit the go-around switch, the toga switch. Hit the toga switch that gets the engines from climb power back up to go-around power, that extra power that you're going to need for this single engine situation, still relatively close to the ground. Hit your heading select and get the aircraft headed in the correct direction, because you may very well be on a SID headed for the rocks somewhere with two engine performance, where now you only have one engine. So you need to get that aircraft straightened out and headed on a heading away from the rocks. And then finally, set speed. You need to set the speed, turn the speed up, so that, and this is assuming that the autopilot is on at this point, that the aircraft nose will drop and that the aircraft will accelerate with the new power setting that you have on, so that you can quickly clean up the aircraft and then continue on with your emergency and call for the correct checklist and get the folks notified and get the aircraft turned around and come back around for a landing. And we had the opportunity to go through the entire checklist procedures and bring it back around to a successful landing. And they always have you hand fly your single engine ILS. Again, for hand skill coordination exercise. You typically hand fly your ILS in the weather from 1,000 feet down to a landing to minimums on one engine. That's standard ATP standards. And as Dan Greider is so fond of saying, when you're dealing with these emergencies on takeoff, sometimes the nearest exit is behind you. Remember when you get on the aircraft, if you ever listen to the briefing, where the nearest exit is, that nearest exit may be behind you. Have you ever looked over your shoulder and counted the number of seats to the nearest exit and figured, okay, I got 5 seats to go. If it's too smoky, I can't see, I can feel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seats and find the nearest exit behind me. The same thing with these engine failures. The solution to your problem may not be to pitch up as your typical V1 cut that you've been trained for years and years and years to do. The correct solution may be to lower the nose slightly to get the speed that you need to finish accelerating the aircraft and get safely away from the ground. One of the other exercises we went through, learning from lessons of the past, is how do you do a go-around after you've already touched down on the runway? What if you bounce a landing so bad that you got to go around after you've hit the runway? How late can you make that decision? Well, first off, you got to get it in the zone. If you don't get the aircraft landed in the zone, you got to go around. So there's another opportunity where you may have to go around after touching down on the runway. As long as you have not pulled those engines into reverse, you can still go around. You use your approach speed as your rotate speed, and you've got plenty of energy to get off the runway very quickly if you push those throttles forward. So basically the procedure is touch down, go ahead and state go around and do your normal go around procedures. Toga, throttles up, make sure those throttles come up. There is some anomalies in the software in the Boeing 777 which may want to retard those throttles on you. You make sure those throttles are up. Do whatever it takes to keep those throttles up for your go-around, and then do your standard go-around litany from there. Go around, flaps 20, positive rate, gear up, and just climb away as normal. You'll be off the ground very quick, rotating at or near your approach speed. A moment of indecision, though, can put you in a situation like we've seen in so many of these crashes recently, especially it was the Dale Earnhardt situation, where those bozos ended up landing hot and long, fast, and it had a series of indecisions there where they attempted to go around after they had already gotten the engines into reverse, completely confusing the computers as to which mode the aircraft was in and not allowing them in that particular aircraft to accelerate at all. And they went off the runway fast and hard and wrapped that aircraft up in a chain link fence, and everybody was very lucky to get out of that aircraft alive. But then we did one of my favorite part of the sims is the visual approach and landing, and again a chance to hand fly the aircraft with as much or as little automation as possible. Again, back it up with some kind of approach guidance, something more than just the VASI or visual approach slope indicator lights. Back it up with the ILS glide slope, or back it up with this technology. Even if you hit the end of the runway, the FMC will build you a glide path that'll give you an approximate 3-degree glide path from the end of the runway. And of course there's always math too, which you use on general aviation aircraft or any aircraft, the 3-to-1 rule. If you're 3 miles out, you got to be 1,000 feet above the ground, and 6 miles out, 2,000 feet above the ground, and so on. And that'll give you a 3-degree glide path to the runway. So we worked out a solution that works out great for the Boeing 777. Like I said earlier, I've been doing a lot of visual approaches up in Idaho with the Husky and been well practiced at it, but you need some basic numbers to work with in something as big as a Boeing 777. So as it turns out, if you take a Boeing 777 and offset your downwind about 2 miles, a 2-mile downwind from beside the runway, slow the thing down to what I call canyon speeds in the Husky. When you get down in the canyons, you need to slow down to a reasonable maneuvering speed to get in there. In the case of the Boeing 777, you're at flaps 1 or flaps 5 speed, around 220 knots or so on downwind, 2 miles out, 2,500 feet above the ground. And then you work yourself out so that you're 45 degrees off of the runway to start your base. So you look over your shoulder, in the case of a visual approach, until you see the runway 45 degrees off of you. And in the case of the Boeing 777, you can see it on the flight instruments right there. And then start your turn. gear down, start lowering the flaps on speed, power almost to idle, pretty much to idle, and it's going to be a nose down to about 1,000 feet per minute, and just a steady 30-degree bank around at 1,000 feet per minute, slowing down to approach speed while configuring in that turn. And you can, if you do it right and adjust for any crosswinds you got, end up at 1,000 feet stabilized for approach, and certainly by 500 feet stabilized for the approach. That means fully configured, all your checklists done, and on speed, on glide path at 500 feet for a normal landing. And that is a really fun and rewarding thing to do in the simulator with something as big as a Boeing 777. So this is some great training. It's a great opportunity to get you back up to speed, get you sharpened up, get you ready for the flight line. Get out there and dealing with the angry hordes. I'm looking forward to that. We'll tell you all about it when we get there. Thanks so much for your support of this channel, and for all the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. We'll see you here. I got to get over and do an Oroville update soon too, and show you how dry the Oroville Reservoir is getting. See you here.
Got 1,000 feet to lose. So let's turn on final. There we go. Good breeze. Well, you want to get here before noon, boys.